The next person that we have to present is John Romero from New Mexico DOT, and he's going to talk about their chip seal program. So welcome, John.
Thank you, Kim, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to New Mexico. My name is John Romero. I am the Highway Operation Director for the New Mexico Department of Transportation. Like Rick said, we have quite a good representation from our department here, but I also recognize people that I met recently at the AASHTO maintenance conference. I don't know if I introduced myself formally to you, but I do recognize some faces, so hello again. I wanted to go over our state's chip seal program. In fact, when I was at the AASHTO maintenance conference in DC, I chatted a little bit with a few people about it, and I didn't realize that some states didn't have a chip seal program, and there was a couple that didn't even really know what it was and what role it plays in managing a transportation system. So what I want to do is go over our chip seal program, explain its role in our overall operation, explain the benefits of it, as well as kind of give a general overview of what the process entails. So first off, I listed our current roadway assets, and so I'm not going to go over all of them, mostly just the road items. As you can see, we have 31,000 total lane miles of roadway. 4,400 of them are interstate, about 8,500 U.S. routes. Close to 16,000 are New Mexico routes, and then 2,200 other, and those would be little connections, frontage roads, things of that nature. I wanted to give the rest of the list. The grand total of this is close to $15 billion worth of total assets. And so I know our state, we're relatively small population-wise, but we do have a very extensive roadway infrastructure just because of the amount of area that we do cover. So chip seal and its role in pavement preservation is a huge part of how we keep everything together. So life cycle strategies. Before I get into chip seal, I want to just kind of give context of asset management, just a quick overview of that. So this comes from our Transportation Asset Management Plan. Life cycle planning means arranging the right treatments for the right assets at the right time to optimize system performance, lengthen asset lifespans, and minimize maintenance cost. At NMDOT, life cycle planning is woven into the asset management framework. Okay, so that's a real fancy word that goes in a real fancy document, or fancy definition in a fancy document. These graphs are out of our TAMP, and I know they're not terribly legible, but I'm just going to go over what they represent. This first graph is what I consider like a reactive maintenance approach. Basically, you build your roadway and you wait for its service life to end, which is typically 20 years, then you come back and rebuild it again. As you can see, it dips down after 20 years into the red area, which is pretty much poor condition, and then we got to go through the entire expense of rebuilding the roadway portion to bring it up to an acceptable level. So what this graph shows is that over a 40-year period, we're spending close to $1 billion if we were to follow this approach on our roadway systems. Now this next diagram shows what basically pavement asset management, proper asset management, and pavement pres does. It's doing a series of small preventative maintenance improvements over a 40-year period. In this scenario, we're spending $800 million, but as you can see, the road never dips into a poor condition. We're still in a fair condition. So those are illustrations that basically explain the benefits of appropriate pavement preservation. So here we go, pavement preservation. This is another long, fancy definition, even longer and fancier, made from our friends at FHWA. I'm not going to go over the entire, I'm not going to read it word for word, but I'll give what my basic thought is of pavement preservation. What it is just preventing oxidation of our roadway system. I think oxidation is the root cause of roadway failure. Oxidation issues, drying of our road basically, causes raveling, loss of bond between aggregates, and it also causes cracking. Cracking causes secondary problems such as moisture penetration, which can result into subgrade failure. So keeping lotion on our roadways is extremely helpful in keeping them rejuvenated and keeping them in a good state of repair. So here's our pavement condition rating graph. And I know we can't read the numbers that great, but basically what it says is going from a very good, which is in blue, down to the next color is supposed to be green is good, yellow's fair, orange is poor, and red is very poor. And on the side of it, it gives a list of what kind of treatments we would do for those, and I'll go into that in a little more detail in the next slide. Now for chip seal, our chip seal just isn't done in the very good area where we do minor preservation. We also apply it in the good area where we do major preservation and minor rehabilitation. So those different levels, pretty much from top to bottom, here they are. Minor preservation, those include things such as fog seal, crack seal, chip seal, and surface coats, which is where chip seals fall. Major preservations are overlays to minor rehabilitation and thin mill and inlays. And then moving on up to minor to major rehab, those are a lot deeper mill and inlays. And then major rehab, 5-inch in depth type of rehabs, which includes PPCs and FDRs. And then after that, we have to move on to full construction. So chip seal. So like I said, it's part of our minor preservation and our major preservation program. Minor preservation is pretty simple. It's our first effort at maintaining a roadway. It's just basically a thin overlay over the road. This is the standard treatment of chip seals that most people realize their application. What it does, it renews the aging surface, gives it an aesthetic appeal, provides an all-weather surface, waterproofs it, does that through sealing of cracks, sealing the minor surface imperfections, which are the cracks, provides surface macro texture, provides a friction course, reinforces the pavement, and it slows the oxidation. Again, one of the main causes of pavement failure. So now major preservation. I'm going to give a quick high overview of what our major preservation is, and then I'll explain where chip seal falls in that. So first, this is going from basically our most aggressive, expensive treatment down to our more affordable ones. Of course, we do them all. They all have their role in what we do. First is mill and inlay. It's basically a mill and fill. You remove old asphalt, you put back new one. In this one, there's really no recycling involved. You're taking out old, putting in new. The next one, we have various types of hot in place recycle. With this, we heat and scarify the pavement, mix and lay the recycled material, and then on top of that, we either add a virgin mix and or a wearing course, and the wearing course is where chip seal fits in. Next is our cold in place recycled. What we do is we have stockpiled wrap piles, we crush them to spec, we mix with the emulsion and lay it down, and then we come back and cap it with a wearing course. I put in parentheses on both those after set. In a lot of these processes, it involves moisture, so we got to wait for that moisture to be removed before we cap it. If we don't cap it, it doesn't last, especially through our winters that we have, the freeze thaws. So it's very important that we cap those last two treatments. So wearing course, again, it was in hot in place and cold in place. And basically what a wearing course is, a thin overlay, prevents moisture intrusion, provides friction, caps the major preservation, some of the major preservation treatments, the ones I just outlined, and it comes in various types. OGFC is, it's one of the more expensive ones. It's typically done on new construction, although it can be done in some of our pavement rehab projects. Microsurfacing, plant mix wearing course, which is just an extremely asphalt-based overlay, and then our chip seal. So I'm going to show a couple of pictures of what some of these end products look like. So this is a hot in place. This is again where we scarify the road, we add some rejuvenators, put back the material, and then we cap it with a chip seal. This was in District 4, and as you can see, you know, especially right after it's done, it pretty much looks like a brand new roadway. This one is recently done in District 4. It was actually completed, I think, 1 or 2 weeks ago. And this one, we did a cold in place recycle. Again, this is where we crush existing wrap, mix it with rejuvenators, and lay it down, and then we cap it with our material. So the right frame shows the end product, the left shows us during our chip seal process. For this particular project, so it was 19 miles. It cost us, the cold in place recycle was 1.3 million, only 1.3 million, and the chip seal cost us about $400,000, so grand total about 1.7. So that's more than half of what it would cost for a conventional mill and fill. So you know, it's a very cost-effective way of maintaining and repairing our roads.
How many miles is that? I'm sorry.
19 miles. And a 2-lane road with virtually no shoulders. Doug may know. No, not Doug was in. It was this was a brazier. 3 inches. Yep. So this was a 3-inch. Thank you, Adam. And so Adam's our District 4 maintenance engineer, so he helped spearhead that project. So benefits of chip sealing. So again, we have another picture. This is a chip seal in District 5 at Hopewell. So I know it's a bit repetitive, but I like to drive home a few of these points. It's a cost-effective pavement preservation, useful in remote areas where hot mix is not available. Now that's huge for our state. You know, we're a very large state, and a lot of corners of our state are far from areas where hot mix is readily available. So this is of huge benefit to that regard. Now, another thing is we have a lot of very low volume, very rural roads that should almost be county roads, but we're taking over who knows when, over who knows what deal, and we're maintaining them. So this really helps us with those types of infrastructure. Going on with benefits, environmentally sustainable, that's accomplished through preserving the life of the roadway, a basic way of doing that, and supporting other processes utilizing wrap, and I know I touched on those before, hot in place and cold in place recycling. And then we also use wrap for our chips themselves. So talking about wrap, okay, wrap, reclaimed asphalt pavement. So this is what comes up when we basically demolish a road, and it's done through milling. We're approaching, as far as what the DOT owns in their inventory, 1 million cubic yards of wrap. So as you can imagine, it's becoming an issue for us of where to put it and how to deal with it. That $1 million does not include the stockpiles that our contractors have. So, you know, it's a significant expense to major rehab and reconstruction projects. A lot of that is now we can't take on anymore, so we're asking the contractors to keep it, and that adds an expense because they don't want it either. They're having issues finding ways of utilizing it and dealing with it. So dealing with the wrap, you know, things that we do is we can donate it to government or quasi-government entities, which we do. There's an application process, and we're very giving when it comes to that. We utilize it in our major preservation projects, and again, that's back to our hot in place and cold in place type of operations. And then just through appropriate pavement preservation and asset management, that just through the course of time is going to reduce the amount of wrap we create over time. So that's where this is an important part of our overall preservation effort. I mentioned that we utilize it for chips. So pros, you know, again, we have to crush it to spec. Pros, ours eliminates excess millings. We have stockpile millings and we get to use them up. So that's a pro. It's sustainable. Obviously, we're recycling existing material. It's budget friendly because we don't have to buy virgin chips. We just have to pay for crushing of what we have. And it also has a budget connotation through the fact that it's pre-coated aggregate. Being that it does already have some oils on it, it requires that we use less oil when we're laying it down. There are cons to it. It does get some of our equipment pretty dirty, and it makes it harder to clean. So that is one con. We do have to wash the piles. And then waste, when we crush it, we can't use 100% of what we crush on chips. We used to shoot for about 60 to 40 split, 60% of the pile that we would be able to crush to a usable chip, and then 40% that's basically a fine waste. And that's approaching more 50-50 as time moves on. This image was provided by one of our contractors. I think they were exaggerating exactly that issue. But in this, they show on the left side, those are that's the amount of chips being created through the same crusher for chips, and on the right is the waste pile, and you can see it pumping out of there. Again, I think they slowed down the conveyor on the left, but we won't argue with them. But there is that issue, though, right? It doesn't allow us to use all of them, but a good portion of them. So FHWA participation. So for quite some time during our federally participating reconstruction projects, when we'd mill up roadways, we would, as part of that contract, have that contractor not only mill it up, but crush it for us and stockpile it. And this was a huge help because we use that federal money to do this crushing portion. Backing up our chip seal program is 100% state funded, so being able to get this federal help was really helpful. Well, friends from FHWA, we definitely want to talk about this a little bit more. But right now, the way it works is it can be crushed, but only if those chips, and be participating by FHWA, if those chips are going to be used within the project termini that it was milled from. So of course that becomes an issue because, by the time we come back and chip it, or even if it's an interstate where we don't chip, we virtually won't be able to use those millings for that termini. So it can't be used on other routes. And if it is on other routes, non-participating. So basically, in our federally participating construction projects, if we want the contractor to crush it with our intent of using it somewhere else, we'd have to consider it a non-participating item and pay for it 100% out of our state budget. So that is something that we definitely want to see if we can work out and see if we can make a win-win for everybody. Basically, the role of the chip seal in our asset management plan, its application with different types of preservation treatments, and the benefits of it. So what is a chip seal? And so I know most of you might probably know what it is, but I'm going to give just a quick rundown of what that is. So here's the definition from Grantsburg University of Oklahoma. So I'll read it because it's kind of short. It's a preventative maintenance treatment that consists of a layer of asphalt binder that is overlaid by a layer of embedded aggregate that furnishes a skid-resistant surface while sealing fine cracks in a pavement surface and preventing water intrusion into the pavement. So I think that's a pretty good explanation of it. This is basically what our process entails. First we set up traffic control. We do surface preparation. I'll explain what that entails later on. We apply the binder, which is basically an asphalt emulsion. We broadcast the aggregate over it. We roll it, sweep it, and then in some instances, we'll throw a fog over it after the fact. So asphalt emulsion, what is it? So that picture there, that's one of our distributors that we retired, I think, 2 years ago, but it served its life. So anyways, what it is it's basically asphalt water and an emulsifying agent. And so the benefit of an asphalt emulsion as opposed to regular pavement is it doesn't have to be kept as hot as regular pavement. Regular pavement's more applicable in a batch plant where it's a controlled environment and you batch it there with material. It doesn't have to be kept as hot, so it's more conducive to transport. So we can transport it in a tanker to our site and then distribute it on the site. And then it's just safer and easier to work with. The mineral aggregate, so here's some things to consider, uniform size and cubicle. So basically we want it all the same size and we want a cubicle shape. This really just helps it set and fit together almost like a puzzle. The better together it sets, the better it will last. You need it clean, although that's not always doable. It's just the nature of the business. Sometimes they're a little bit dirtier, but you do want them as clean as you can. And then sound. So this image, this is, to me, a good depiction of what chip seal really is. That first image is basically that the orange thing is the emulsion that we lay down, and the chips are on top getting ready to be embedded. Once they're initially embedded, they go down a certain depth. Then after we roll them, they go down even further, and then as traffic travels over them, they get further embedment. So that embedment, what we're looking for is 50 to 70% embedment. And this is accomplished through a proper emulsion shot rate, allowing the emulsion to set for the proper time, proper types of chips, and the chip placement rate, I guess you would call it, and proper rolling. So, if we get too much embedment, then you can get bleeding. Too little embedment, then the chips will start breaking loose and they won't retain as good as we would want. So here is, this is a video in District 4 of a chip seal deal in operation. I think there is. Yes, please. A little low on this one. The next one I want a little bit higher. Yeah, so there we go. As you can see in the foreground, or far away, I don't know if that's the foreground, apologies. There's our distributor laying the emulsion, and right behind it we have our chip spreader with our 10-yarder there dumping chips into it. As you can see there, we have the distributor a little far ahead. We need that emulsion to set. It can't be we can't put chips just directly on it. It'll be a slippery mess. Not only will the chip spreader, but especially our trucks, they'll be sliding all over and peeling up chips. So it's called, the term we use is cracking. You just gotta have it, let it set a little bit so it's sticky, but still malleable. So here's our planning process when you do our chip seal. So we try to the roads that we chip seal on a regular basis, we try to do it every 7 years. And if we do that, we can keep a road up and running from 5 years on upwards, depending on the amount of traffic it takes and where it's at. So again, it's a very cost-effective process. We plan our routes years in advance, and we stockpile chips close to those routes in advance, so that way we're doing short hauls during the process of placement. We coordinate with our patrols 6 months in advance, and they help us to do some of that surface preparation I mentioned before. We repair and clean the surface, fill potholes, repair broken edges, seal large cracks, and level ruts. The chip sealing will not accomplish those items, so it's important that that is done before we move on with it. Here's an example of a project we did out in District 2. This is 2 years after it was chip sealed, and you can see it's still in fabulous shape. There's very little oxidation, very little cracking, and it's really helping us to hold that roadway together. What's that? I don't know. Do you know, Eddie? It was. So that was done with wrap chips. Thank you.
So if we have questions, please raise your hand. There's a microphone in the back, and we'll be able to capture that a lot better with what's actually back there. So I know it's hard. And I know it's hard to remember that, but if you can, if you have a question, raise your hand, we'll bring a microphone around. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, John.
Oh, that's okay. It's okay. So our operation, so this is basically the manpower we need. Our average crew size is 18 people. We have 1 crew per district, so 5 of our districts does chip sealing. We have 6 total districts, but as Rick mentioned, right now we're in District 3. This is the Albuquerque metropolitan area, so we don't have virtually any rural roads here. So we don't have a chip seal program here in District 3, but our other 5 do, average 18 crew size. And again, the patrols assist in the operation. A quick list of equipment that we use: dump trucks, chip spreaders, oil distributors, rollers, brooms, loaders, water tankers, and in some instances, graders. Here's, so our application rates. I mentioned that our application rates are crucial in ensuring proper embedment and a proper chip seal. Factors that we consider that affect the shot rates are weather, the road condition, traffic volumes, rock condition, and the existing asphalt condition as far as how oxidized it is. These are just some ranges that we have. So the high float emulsion, that's the emulsion that gets placed before we put the chips. We do 32 to 58 square yards. And then the CSS1P, that's our fog seal, 12 to 18 gallons per square yard. Our aggregates in pounds per square yard, virgin chips, 18 to 32 pounds, and our wrap chips, 28 to 33. And so here's another video I want to share with you guys. If you could turn up the volume a little bit more, I have a person speaking on this. This is in District 1, and it's on New Mexico 159 in Mogollon. And this just really shows that you can do this virtually everywhere. This road is very tight, very hard to get equipment in, but our guys did it, and they did a fabulous job. And again, they're using chips.
This is exactly the same as any other road, except this road is just a little bit narrow. This road is only 1.5 lengths wide, so there's not enough room for 2 cars to get by. We can't let any traffic go by that may conflict with anything. So right now we hold traffic to the end until all the dump trucks have dumped into the chip box and they're clear. We'll move traffic over and we'll call down and say, all right, we're having traffic come down the hill. That way we don't have anybody meeting head on around these bad turns. You make a turn? We don't want anybody sliding off the road. So what we do is like I said, we try to get just enough chips, just enough oil. That way it's a good match and the rollers pack it in. And that way there's not a lot of loose gravel on the road to make people slide around.
Yeah, so that was Bob Delp that helped us with that. And again, I tried to sneak it in before I started talking on this one. You can see that we used wrap chips on this one as well. All right, so this next one basically is our performance, what we try to do. So we try to do 1,000 lane miles a year where possible. And our cost per lane mile is around $11,000 per lane mile, although I think it's been going up lately with escalations. Hopefully those might go back down our next time we advertise a price agreement, but we'll see how that works. So this is over a 4-year period from 2018, or I guess 5-year period, excuse me, 2018 to 2022. That top line is basically how much money we spent. That top line is basically the cost per lane mile. So it shows that it's been fairly flat for the past 5 years. Those green bars, that's how much total lane miles we did each of those years. So in 2018, we did pretty close to 1,000, a little bit over 1,000 in 2019. And then, in 2022, it dipped a little bit. So as you can see, our production dipped, but our total costs kind of stayed the same. And what happened, I think, is a bit due to escalation, but the reason that we weren't able to lay that much is, as I'm sure you guys might have seen in the news, but we had a pretty major wildfire up in northern New Mexico, primarily in District 4. And our special crews, including our chip seal crews, have been helping not only with the fire mitigation, but with the subsequent flooding that's happened. And so they've been working nonstop since Easter. In fact, I think they just barely got started chip sealing last week or maybe even this week. So we got a little bit of dip in production this past year, but we're looking to get that going again. Of course, ranting and raving about all this, and we really do. We take a lot of pride in our chip seal program, and it's something that we feel that New Mexico does. We do chip seal. Every year we have our yearly state pavement preservation competition. It's basically our chip seal competition. And we do yearly evaluations that are conducted by statewide team members from all of our district offices as well as our general office. Criteria we look at, well, first each district submits roads that they want evaluated, some of the roads that they chip sealed that year. And we evaluate them for chip retention, appropriate embedment, center joints, how those butt up and how smooth they are, start and stop joints, absence of other flaws, drilling skid marks, evidence of plug nozzles, uniformity and completeness, and conservation of resources, basically that we're not sweeping tons of chips off the road, that we're putting down just what we need. So these are the evaluation criteria we do. And so again, we hold this conference every year, and we award a grand prize to the best chip seal crew. Again, we look at their roads, and whoever rates the best is that crew. Right now, District 4 has been our back-to-back championship, three-peat, and but it's a very stiff competition. Everyone does a really good job. Each district puts together their own video presentation showing the accomplishments they've done, showing videos of what they've done. In fact, that Mogollon video as well as the one in, I think it was District 5 or 2, I forget where that first video was. Those were taken straight out of their, some of their video slides. We present the crews, and each we provide an award. So this last year, our award, Armando with our materials lab, him and our exploration crew, they actually helped to weld this. We made we call it a disco. It's basically a cooking disc, and it's going to basically be a traveling trophy like the Stanley Cup. So District 4 has it now. Whoever wins next year, they'll get it, and they can use it to help cook breakfast, burritos, whatever they need for the guys out there. So again, it's something that we take a lot of pride in. And this is our whole chip seal crew for the most part, and everyone that's involved with it. With that, that's the end of my presentation, and I'll stand for any questions or comments.
So actually, I have a couple questions. First, back to your slide on the cost. Do you recover like those costs? Are they including the labor piece of it, or is that just the material piece? Because these are in-house crews. Just wondering. Yes,
that's a very good question, and it includes everything. We track our labor, our equipment, and our material cost.
Okay, and then the second question was, I really like your competition thing. I think that's cool. Where I'm from, chip seal season is basically mid-May to the end of August is the latest. In New Mexico, how does that work? I mean, so we have a couple dedicated chip seal crews in our state. So it's kind of like a quarter of their position. How does that work in New Mexico for those crews? Are they half-time doing that type of work, or how does that work?
Yes, so it depends on what region of the state we're in. So our state's fairly diverse. Up north we have pine trees and snow. We have elevations above alpine, and then down south we got cactus and lechuguilla type of plants. So down south, the chip seal, districts 1 and 2 primarily, the chip seal season lasts longer. Up north, it's roughly around what you mentioned. During their off season, they can help our special crews out with other things that need to happen throughout the year. They also can, they help with snow removal. That's another important part. They'll hop in a snow truck and help with that.
Yeah, this isn't really a question, but I wanted you to go back to the slide that had the quantities that you were using of your oils and chip seals, and your chips, I should say. Have you guys used any of the CHFRS2P, the new high float oil? We're using that up in Montana, and we're very happy with it.
No, we have not. And we haven't discussed it much. So what's your experience with that? How long have you guys used it?
We've probably been using it for about maybe 3 to 5 years now, and we're pretty much, we were using CRS2P, and we're primarily going to the CHFRS2P now.
What kind of benefits are you noticing?
We just seem to have less failures with the chip seals, and the chips seem to embed better.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really enjoyed that presentation. I don't know an awful lot about chip seal, so it was great to get a good explanation. I understand it pretty well. Thank you. Question for you. You mentioned you have your own chip seal crews. Do you use contractors for the pavement markings, the striping, or do you do that in-house?
Yes, another good question. So yes, we do contract out the striping after the fact. And again, that's probably about the only thing that we contract out of the whole process. Unless it's part of one of our major PRES projects, the hot in place and cold in place. Those two operations are contracted out.
Wanted you to leave that slide up there on the rates. I'm Gary Hicks from the California Pavement Preservation Center. I presume those are tenths. That's not 32 gallons to 58 gallons, is it? Per square yard, that's a tenth. Huh? What?
Yeah, it's 100.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
Well,
It's
yeah, but
100,
it says
so,
gallons per square yard. I don't see a point there, so, yeah.
There should be a point. I apologize about
Okay,
that.
I just wanted to make sure. It didn't look like that in the slides.
Keeping you guys on your toes, man. I want to make sure you guys are paying attention.
All the emulsion
Yeah.
suppliers are salivating.
I can see it.
So for your wrap chips, what percentage of your chips are wrapped? Do you do 100% wrap chips? Are you blending those? What are your percentages?
So as far as our total program, I don't have that number, but when we use wrap chips, it's either wrap chips or virgin chips. We don't blend them. Right? I don't think we do.
Hi, good presentation. I just wanted to, I was
curious, have you done any Cape seals where you're using microsurfacing over the chips?
No, we have not done. Now, we'll use microsurfacing instead of chips over some of our major preservation projects, but no, we have not done that.
Yeah, I want to come back to your wrap a little bit. You're wasting 50% of it, right? Is that pure waste, or have you found anything useful to do with the fines when you recycle that wrap? Or maybe anybody in this room, has anybody found something useful to do with those?
Rick will help me with that question. I know we use it to help build up some of our shoulders and things of that nature, but you may have more complete.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, we had a lot of what we consider to be a waste material, right? And that just started to stockpile as well, giving us problems. So we tried a couple of things. So we were adding an emulsion to it at one time, thinking we can do some pothole patching with it. That didn't work out so well. We've added another emulsion, different type of emulsion to it, and we started using it for when we had breakoffs on the toe of the slope. That worked pretty darn good. We used it also in some areas where we had erosion, right? Some median ditches and other things where the pavement was breaking off or the concrete was breaking off, and we utilized it in those types of scenarios. That worked pretty good. But in those scenarios, you really don't use a whole lot of it. So you can use it in micros. We're trying to figure out a process where we can use a lot of that in a micro. But we're open to some new processes. I know some of our contractors, vendor suppliers are talking about those. We're interested in hearing about those because as we move more to the recycled chip, we obviously have to come up with some sort of resolution to the waste. And there's a lot of it. I know the counties, municipalities have been taking a lot of it. I'm not too sure what they're using it for. My guess is similar to what we're using. I think they mentioned that they're starting to lay it down in turnouts and other types of rural areas that are working pretty well. But we're trying to be creative with it because, like I said, as we move to more of a recycled chip, we also have to find uses for the waste because it is becoming an issue.
John, I just wanted to comment. District 2, about 4 years ago, we did a micro job with RAP, the actual waste that you guys, and it went right down the middle in spec. The city of Deming, you guys have been giving them lots of millings, and they've done micro RAP for the last 2 years. Good process, so there's a use for it. When I was district engineer, I actually did some scrub sealing with the fines. Worked good, so it's not waste, there's a use for it.
Great presentation, and I just want to give you guys, part of this presentation was about celebrating success. And every time I come to New Mexico and Land of Enchantment, and I go to that chip seal conference, I walk away with just a great appreciation of what the New Mexico State DOT puts together. You guys should be applauded for the efforts of that associate, that presentation and that award you guys give. Because it really does create some camaraderie, and you guys do a great job with us.
What's the gradation that you use for your chips?
Typically, it's 3/8, isn't it? Sometimes ½ inch, but mostly 3/8, I believe. Thank you.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.